been approved that will be entering into the Bridgeport City and also the Bridgeport Board of Education. These are funds that have specific and targeted uses that we are currently reviewing the application and putting together our priorities that will fit the criteria for spending. I just want to be very clear. The request is in addition to, and this is like we would normally do in any other year. This is monies that we need in our budget from the city and from the state in order to operate. Those dollars coming from the federal government are not to supplant any of the services that we provide our children and our families through our operating budget. So I want that to be very clear, because I know that a lot of folks think that Bridgeport Public Schools is going to receive all this money. Why would you need more money from the city, or why would you need more money from the state? That money is very specific in its uses, and it will dry up in a couple of years. And from that point on, anything that we think that we're going to fund, we will lose that funding, and those funds and those programs and those individuals, if we hired additional staff, will be cut from the budget. So we won't want to get to a cliff where we have to then lose everything that we've added. So I just want that to be very clear to some folks as we kick off tonight's presentation. Bridgeport is the lowest level on the economic scale amongst all school districts in Connecticut. District's enrollment this year, as of 10/1/2020, is 19,330, the largest in Connecticut. Within the total, there has been growth in special education and English language learners. Those are our most neediest and our most vulnerable student populations. As of 10/1/2020, with the total enrollment at 19,330, Bridgeport had 3,449 students who received special education services. We also had almost 4,000 students receive that are identified as English language learners, So almost 18% of our population has an IEP and receives specialized instruction and services, and over 20% are English language learners. Bridgeport, as one of the nation's highest poverty districts, serves breakfast and lunch at no cost to all students in the district without collecting household applications. And as to our education budget, it is established fact that Bridgeport is grossly underfunded, as we all have talked about for several years, in comparison to its peer districts. Bridgeport spends a net of $15,329 per student, in comparison to Hartford, who spends $20,336. Significant difference. Bridgeport is underfunded by $20 million for every $1,000 in spending it does not receive for students. If Bridgeport was equitably funded with Hartford, as an example, Bridgeport's budget would rise by $100 million. I'm going to begin then our slide presentation. This is our budget request for 2021-22. As I go through the budget, I just want to go frame by frame. Part one of the budget is our fiscal framework, our goals and challenges, which includes our district enrollment. We're anticipating an increase in enrollment after we reemerge out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, our challenges are net expenditure per pupil, our fiscal goals. We always keep those in mind when we're planning our budget. We utilize our school allocation model, and we take into consideration all our fiscal challenges. As you can see, in comparison from last school year, from October 1st of 2019 to October 1st of 2020, Bridgeport saw a decline of about 800 students in total enrollment. However, we do project that the impact is due to the pandemic, and once we emerge from this pandemic, we do anticipate that our enrollment will surge back up toward 20,000 students. As you can see, the total percentage of the budget spent on special education is roughly 30%, or a little over $91 million. As I was explaining to you in our talking points, Bridgeport spends in the net current expenditures per pupil $15,329. And as you can see, compared to Waterbury, New Haven, Stanford, and Hartford, we are the lowest, and we are by far the lowest compared to Hartford, Connecticut. We rank 166 from highest to lowest. Out of 166 school districts, we are 155. So we are basically at the bottom when it comes to funding here in the state of Connecticut. The state uses a special education excess cost grant, provides partial reimbursement for expenses incurred by districts for out-of-district placements. The district is required to pay 4.5 times our net expenditure per pupil for each out-of-district placement. As you can see, the excess cost cap is rising since 2016, which means more and more of the burden falls on Bridgeport Public Schools to pay the out-of-district costs. This budget is, in our fiscal goals, is based on a structurally balanced budget, a school-based budgeting model, fiscal accountability, and a comprehensive fiscal management plan. School allocation, what does that mean? The core components of school allocation is position allocation, equitable and uniform staffing formulas with consideration for individual school-specific needs. The operating allocation, $20 per student, and it was increased for fiscal year 2021 to $25 with the additional CARES Act grant that we received. And then there's continued options such as deployment of discretionary funds for part-time personnel, interventionists, tutors, and such. Teacher's choice allocation, $30 per classroom teacher is based on the first payroll in October. We increased that dollar amount to $50 this year with the money that we received from the CARES Act grant, and that is given to all via a specialty e-card. And then there's the parent involvement grant, as you all are aware. Bridgeport gives each school $8.73 per student. That's 1% of the Title I appropriation. Fiscal challenges. Energy costs, energy conservation is something that we try to strive for here in the Bridgeport Public Schools, but utility costs are constantly on the rise. We also have legal services, transportation. We try to utilize as efficient routing methods as possible, including TransFinder, which is a computer program that maps out the best routes to transport our students to school. We try to spend as much money as we can on intervention services in order to provide students with early intervention to try to stop the pipeline into special education. We try to monitor very closely absence coverage, substitute teacher costs, and also benefits and escalated costs are always a challenge when it comes to health insurance and such for our employees. Just going to give you a brief overview of the 2021 budget that we're currently operating. This year's budget is a total budget of $256,455,009. Of that, the city's share of that budget was $69,040,631. That was an additional $2,250,000 from the previous year. The state ECS budget total was $187 million, 414,378. That included ECS and Alliance ECS. That was an increase from the prior fiscal year of $2 $323,537. We have Title I dollars, $2.3 million. We have priority numbers that increased 58,204, and due to declined enrollment and at the interdistrict magnets, our magnet school grant decreased by over $500,000. So as you can see, the city's share of the total operating budget is 26.9%, where the state ECS share is 73.1% of the budget. So as you can see, the Alliance ECS increase is less than 1% change from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021. The city contribution of $2.25 million was an increase, again, of less than 1%. And the total change, as you can see from the slide here, is 1.82%. Just to review again, the city's contribution, 26.9%, the state's contribution, 73.1%. When you go through the total growth year by year, going back to 2015, 2016, Bridgeport's increase was 2.45%. In 2015, 2016, a negative 0.45% in 16, 17. 0.06% in 17-18, 1.36% 18-19, 1.59% in 2019-20, and this year, as you saw, 1.82%. So in average over 6 years, the total growth of the budget was 1.14%. The city's contribution was approximately 0.5% of growth in 6 years, and the state was roughly the same, about 0.5%. And this slide will give you that very clearly. As you can see, you cannot continue to provide a robust curriculum and robust services for a district this size with an increase of about 1% over 6 years. Part 3 is the 2021-22 operating budget request. This year, our operating budget request is a total of $273.4 million. That is a $17 million increase from 2021. We're asking the city to contribute $6 million, which would increase their dollar amount to a little over $75 million. We're expecting, although the governor's proposed budget would negate this $2.3 million increase from the state, so that would increase our budget gap by $2.3 million. We're projecting stability in the federal grants, Title I, Title IIA, Title III, which is bilingual education, and IDEA, which is federal dollars for special education services, and for the state grants, for priority, bilingual plus, and magnet, we are expecting stability as well. So it's really critical that the city's requested number and that the state legislature does not adopt the governor's budget, or that would be $8.3 million that Bridgeport would not receive. Some of the things that are driving the budget, as you can see, collective bargaining agreements. Increase in pay for our staff. They all deserve a raise. They all worked extremely hard, particularly during the last year during COVID. That will account for almost $5 million, as you can see, $4.76 million. That includes the increases in salary, plus Medicare, Social Security, and MRF, which is pension. Our health insurance growth, we're anticipating our insurance growth. The trend is 6%, so we're budgeting 6%, which is over $3.5 million. The MRF, which is for our non-certified staff, our contribution for their pensions is going to be about $1 million. We're always budgeting roughly another $1 million for escalating costs in special education. Given the pandemic and the loss of learning, that number could grow, and it could grow and increase dramatically based on what happens when kids return back from being remote and losing a third of the school year last year due to the closing of the state. Transportation, we're hoping again for the $500,000 contribution and from the city, and also the transportation contract increase will bring the transportation budget up $350,000. Internal service fund, we want to make sure that we put the money into the internal service fund of $2 million. As you can see, there was a $3 million from fiscal year 20 surplus that was applied, and also the vacancy fill factor, allowance to annualize new hires and fill carried over vacancies, which is over $2 million. And then we'd like to have a little bit possible in reserve to offset any growths and shortfalls that we don't anticipate seeing. There's always a staff turnover through attrition. We have higher priced staff members that may leave, that retire, that find jobs in other districts. And then we hire folks that are at the lower end of the pay scale when it comes to teachers and administrators. So that builds in a little savings there. But overall, the $17 million is a 6.6% increase. Given what we've received in 1.14 over 6 years, this increase would not be unreasonable. These are the non-discretionary costs when it comes to the increase in salaries. These are all in collective bargaining agreements. We cannot go back to the staff and ask them to take pay cuts or furloughs. Given the pandemic and the way everyone has stepped up, that would just be uncalled for and unfair at this time. So again, increasing the $6 million from the city would be an increase of only 2.3% of the total budget, and it would increase the city share. It would be an 8.7% increase. I don't think that's unreasonable. If we were able to get that, it would only drive up the total budget growth from the city share over 7 years from 0.56% to 0.81%. So again, I don't think this is an unreasonable request, given the situation. I think it's not only warranted, it's necessary. That $6 million would be used, $500,000 back to We Transport to maintain transportation services. We'd use $635,000 to compensate for the funds not allocated from fiscal year 21 to maintain the $1.4 million credit that we were issued for transportation services in the previous year, and then $4.58 million to contribute partially to non-discretionary costs, as we discussed, which are the salary agreements, the health insurance, and the MRF growth. Closing the budget gap. These are important dollars. The proposal from the governor to cut us and flat fund us for the next 2 years and kick down the ECS increase that was voted on in 2017 by the legislature would be an overall deficit to Bridgeport over 2 years of over $7 million. That is not here, but that is very pertinent. It's $2.3 million this year, and that number grows next year as well. So that is 2.3, and then the additional. So again, it's over $7 million in 2 years that we lose from the state. And it's critical that the city is able to fund education. I don't think increasing to 0.81% over 7 years is an unreasonable request. If we need to, our budget gap plan will include strategies that we've used in the past: position consolidation, position conversions after attrition. For example, 12-month APs that leave or retire will be transferred into 10-month AP positions, that like we've done over the last 2 years. We've been able to generate some funds and some savings there. Curriculum technology renewal. We try to use grants in lieu of funds traditionally allocated in the operating budget. Position program adjustments, and then the deficit prevention mode, which includes position control, procurement control, and internal controls. Normally, I would like to stop and see if anyone had any questions. I hope you're writing your questions down. When we get to the end of the presentation, I'd be interested to take and answer, and be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Closing the gap, again, deficit prevention mode. Position control. District office vacancies are reviewed to reassess the need to generate savings. Effective this past March 1st, employment of new teacher hires were stopped except in shortage areas, and we are utilizing long-term subs in positions that are vacant currently. We will be aggressive in the next several months in hiring the best staff to start the next school year. We know it's going to be quite competitive with other districts that are experiencing personnel loss due to the pandemic this year. More people are retiring early, or therefore other districts who historically pay more will be trying to take some of the top talent. We are stringent in our enforcement to ensure orders are processed for services and supplies that are mandated or essential and are economically cost effective. And internal controls, restrictions. We have approval workflows and cost effective practices to rigorously provide services, personnel, and non-personnel. So what makes up the operating budget? So we have school operations, we have district office, which is extremely streamlined, and that means the entire school district is run at the district level with 94 full-time employees. That includes myself, executive directors, the entire human resource department, the entire finance department, which includes the budget and financial reporting, payroll and benefits, the business office and transportation, technology, the entire tech IT department, which includes our instructional and professional development folks, our entire facilities department, which is custodial services and building maintenance repairs, data management, and school counseling and parent partnerships. What else makes up the operating budget? School operations, principals, assistant principals, clerical, teachers, speech and language pathologists, school counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, occupational therapists, hearing impaired. That makes up. We also have athletic programs, nurses, security officers, school transportation, legal services. Operating budget for schools, as we mentioned, $20 per pupil. Curriculum renewal, summer programs, high school summer credit recovery, ESY, our extended school year for our SPED students, adult education, and the state grant. So these are all the things that operate a 20,000 plus student school district. You break it up by percentages. 70% of the operating budget is spent on instruction. That includes teachers. You have another then 22% that is administrative support. You have 7% is student support. As we know, when the pandemic is over, social emotional learning, social emotional support for our students is going to be much needed. 7% is not going to cut it. We're going to really need to heavily invest in that area to support our students as we come back to school in person back next in the fall. The benefits, 59% of the benefits, as you can see. We also have workman's comp, Medicare, Social Security, unemployment. It's extremely expensive. That's $59.2 million in healthcare. And when we talk about curriculum renewal, these are some of the things. We have a cycle. We try to be fiscally responsible. So we're not renewing curriculum in all areas, all at the same time. As you can see, to offer curriculum to the number of students that we have in the district and all the supports that go along with it is quite expensive. We currently are in the middle of our literacy K3. That is in year 2 right now. We'll be going into year 3. It was a little over $1 million cost there. We are in year 1 of Reading Wonders for grades 4 through 6. We are in the process now of the renewal for 7 and 8 and 9, 12 in literacy. That anticipated costs need to be factored into the next school year's budget. In math, we are coming to the year 3. Next year will be for our K1, iReady Math Solutions. Our HMH into math, this is going to be year 1 of coming up, 2021, 2022 of 6 years. The estimated cost of that is over $1 million. We are going to be going into year 2 for into math, grade 6, 7, and 8, at a cost of $794,787. And we're currently looking at programs for our high schools in mathematics. We have some additional costs in OB Max Math to support our students. We are looking at where we're going to go once we exhaust our 5 and 6 year cycle in science. And we are currently in the process with our social studies committee to re-examine our social studies curriculum renewal for grades 7 through 12. So again, the essential need is approximately $17 million, which is not an unreasonable ask considering we're coming out of the worldwide pandemic that we haven't seen in over 100 years. Again, Bridgeport ranks 155 out of 166 districts. Our students deserve the best and the most qualified individuals to work with our kids. They deserve a robust curriculum and the best student supports that we can offer in order to provide them with what they need to learn and grow. These are just some of our grant comparisons. As you can see, our summer grant is declining. Our priority grant is declining. Our state bilingual grant is declining. Our interdistrict magnet is projected to decline even further based on our registers on October 1st of 2020. So as you can see, our special education costs have grown from 19.15% of the budget to 29.11%. Our Alliance grant funds a number of things, as you can see in our budget, from things like intervention component and prep enhancement, the district assessment coordinator, some elementary school guidance counselors, school media specialists, special education resource teachers, a prevention component, our district academic team, 30% of our executive directors, our academic support team, which has been critical during the pandemic to support teachers and families with remote and online services, computer technicians. We are also providing support at the Bassett Auto Shop, operations support, discretionary operating allocations for our schools, and a number of other things. Our state priority grant, again, we have the Office of Early Childhood, clerical, grants office staff. We have kindergarten teachers, 50%, 25 of those full-time employees that are funded through the state priority grant. Again, some more components of our academic support team, in-school suspension officers, school social workers. We have an assistant principal. We have instructors over at the Bridgeport Military Academy that are included in this, clerical assistants, our turnaround arts support, which is critical in supporting the arts here in Bridgeport that we know is so critical in providing opportunities for our kids. parent involvement for our high schools, computer literacy teachers, College Board SAT program in grade 12, summer programs, extended school hours, and curriculum technology renewal. We have our Title I, $13.4 million, early childhood clerical staffs and grants office staff that are included in this grant, pre-K, teachers and paraprofessionals at Clater, Johnson, and Skane, our school readiness, Smart Start, Discovery Pre-K, instructional assistants, special education assistants, SRBI teachers in our schools help provide very needed intervention with kids that are struggling. We have elementary parent involvement allocation to 1%, security and custodial fees for parent involvement events that happen after school in the evening and on weekends. We have our school parent rooms and a number of other things. Again, our K-3 Dibbles assessment and the annual parent convention that is always well attended. We have Title IIA. Again, many of the critical components of providing service to our schools and to our students are included in Title IIA. We have Title IV. Again, a little under $800,000. District STEM mathematics curriculum renewals included in here. Science professional development. Our world language course materials. Our AP courses at our high schools are funded through this. Our bullying prevention plans, chronic absentee reduction plans, and our high school dropout prevention plans, which are all critical to supporting students that are at risk and that are struggling. We also have parent involvement. This is also related to our Title IVA initiatives, some technology, and we have a school improvement program in lieu of an ISS officer at Harding High School. So just to summarize, our pillars of excellence in the Bridgeport Public Schools is student achievement, which is first and foremost, a robust and strong curriculum and instruction, parent and family and community involvement, and engagement, recruitment, and retention of high quality staff. And that is the completion of our slide program. Again, I think it's important to mention that regardless of what federal funding is received by Bridgeport Public Schools, those are all to address what we are going to experience in the ramifications of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are well aware that our students are going to need more. We need to provide them with more, and we are creating a plan that will provide them with the social, emotional, and academic support that they need to be successful, given the circumstance that they had no control over, and they are feeling the effects of over the last, upon completion, it'll be about 18 months. So we are ready. We are willing to use those funds in the manner that they are being sent to us from the federal government. We just need to make sure that our state and local folks understand the importance of their funding our operating budget. I'm going to stop there. Mr. Postolowski, I know you're on, and if anyone has any questions, I'd like to start with questions from those that are out in the at home watching the forum tonight.
Well, Superintendent, I can initially share with you that we had one individual that submitted 3 questions in one. First being, can you break down the per pupil expenditures? Then it follows with saying, doesn't the state give Bridgeport more per pupil than it does nearly every district? And the final question relating to that was, doesn't Bridgeport fund the lowest?
Okay, I'm not sure on the question, but our per pupil, our net per pupil is $15,329. Do we receive a significant number of dollars from the state? We do. As you can see in the budget presentation, that the state does fund the vast majority of our budget. So I don't know if that is leaning toward saying that we do deserve to receive more from maybe our local folks. And what was the last part of that question?
And the last part was, doesn't Bridgeport fund the lowest?
I don't quite understand what that means. We spend money as efficiently and effectively given what we have. In comparison to all other districts, we are one of the lowest and definitely the lowest in Fairfield County when it comes to salary schedule for our certified staff. We also have probably the least number of folks operating at the district level. We have total about 80 admins, where New Haven and Hartford and districts similar size have upwards of 130 folks. So we are streamlined. We have consolidated, and very little is not spent within the classroom.
Okay, and sir, in the next submission, it was more statement than it is questions, but within this, the individual indicated, and fixed costs will rise at least $20 million. That's a $20 million hole if COVID dollars hide the loss.
Correct. So that is one of the things that I think is extremely important for folks to understand, is that we don't want to supplant services that we currently pay for in our budget with federal dollars. Those federal dollars, as we know, ESSER 2 funds have to be spent over the course of 2 years. They cannot be carried over beyond that. So if we don't spend it, we lose it. It is also going to be quite expensive to run programs during the summer, during after school, and on Saturdays in order to address the needs of students after the pandemic. There's also monies that need to be utilized in our facilities. We're looking at that as well, which with 37 schools, it's quite expensive if we have to invest in any type of filtration or air quality systems in any of our older school buildings. So this money has specific intentions that fill specific needs that the government has obviously recognized we're going to have as a result of the last, right now, 12 months.
And at this given time, sir, there are no further questions that have been submitted.
Okay, I just want to add one last thing. I know that, there's always a question of where the money goes, and is the money being spent wisely, and that's not just exclusive to Bridgeport. I think other communities face the same questions when it comes to asking for increases in budgets. The one thing I can say in the last 20 months as superintendent here, and in meeting regularly with colleagues during the pandemic via a virtual platform, we discuss a number of the challenges that we all face. But one thing I can say is, in other communities, the average ask of the town, of the municipality, seems to be anywhere from 3.5% to 4.5%, 4.75% increases yearly to the budget. And they usually settle around somewhere close to what they ask for. So I don't think it's unreasonable that we get as close as we can to start inching toward a place where we can ask for a reasonable percentage from our state and local folks and be able to get that. Our kids deserve more. Our kids deserve what other towns and municipalities are able to offer. We've talked a lot, and there's been a lot of talk over the last 12 months about equity. And the one thing I can tell you is this pandemic has shined a bright light on what Bridgeport needs, what Bridgeport deserves, and what the children here are entitled to. So if anyone wants to have a conversation around that, I'm more than happy to have it. But I think it's time that we all realize that equity is more than just rhetoric. Equity is actually walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And I know that may be difficult for some folks to hear, but it's important that we understand that we can't just talk about it. We need to do something about it. And it starts by providing high quality teaching, high quality learning, and high quality support for our kids. And I'll end the evening on that, because I think it's important that we all stay on the same page, because I think we all want what's best for our kids here in Bridgeport. And whatever that takes to come to the table to agree upon that, I think it's important that we do that.
Superintendent, just to notify you that there have been 2 additional questions that have come in.
Sure.
The first one is, will the district reactivate the 501c3 in order to access additional funding into the district?
Great question. The 501c3 has been activated over in recent weeks. It is up and running again, and they can contact our office to get more information on any donation they would like to make to the 501c3. But that's a great question. We have that up and running again. This is, as of the last couple of weeks, we were able to get that going. So.
And then the next question, sir, it's an inquiry on, is the budget audited?
The budget is audited every year. It's randomly audited. The entire city budget is, including the Board of Ed. And it's different departments can be audited at any given time. So it's random and it's very thorough. So that I hope answers that question. I think that's an important question that people need to understand, that this is yearly, that auditors come into the city of Bridgeport and they audit the city and the Board of Ed.
And yet we have another question, sir, which is, what can parents, community groups do to help the Bridgeport BOE?
Well, I think one of the easiest things to do, and I don't want to say it's easy, but it's cost effective. It costs nothing, is to really help support kids and families as we come back to school after COVID, to make sure that we have kids coming to school regularly, parents involved when it comes to PTSO and PAC. Parent involvement is critical to be educated on what's going on in the schools, to be able to support teachers, to be able to support administrators within the building. I think those are the first things, because I think it's important when kids see that parents and families are involved in the school community. So that is a very cheap way to support us. And in other ways is to be able to be active in helping with that 501c3 fundraising. I think it's important. Every dollar counts. So anyone who would like to contribute, or if you know somebody, if you know a business, if you have somebody that lives out of town, out of state, but has connections to Bridgeport or would like to contribute to helping students here in Bridgeport. Today I attended a great event this afternoon prior to the budget over at Central High School. Classical Studies Magnet Academy received a donation for 15 families from Donovan Mitchell and his mom, Nicole. Anyone who does not know that, Donovan is a star player for the Utah Jazz, who has some ties to Miss Giles, the retired principal at Classical Studies, and Miss Davis, who's currently there. So that was a great opportunity, a generous donation to 15 families of MacBook Pros and some other items to use for kids in order to thrive academically. So if you know somebody, or those are just ways that we can all communicate to people that we work with, whether it's a faith-based organization or a community organization. So we're all presenting the same message.
And there was a follow-up to that, wherein it states, help in terms of supporting actions to increase school budget.
Well, I think right now, sending a message to the governors is important. You know, I had this conversation with someone yesterday who is extremely active in Hartford, her and her group in advocating for Bridgeport public school kids and other municipalities like New Haven and Hartford as well, and Waterbury. But I think it's important to say, hey, this is not acceptable. Flat funding, something that was passed in legislation, is not acceptable. You know, it was not well received a couple of years ago, but I'll say it again. These folks are in office because of cities and municipalities like Bridgeport. Bridgeport voters came out to the polls and voted these folks in, especially the governor. And it is not okay to propose a budget that's going to cut us over $7 million that of new money that was coming in, that was anticipated over the next 2 years. So I think it's important to advocate. There are elections every November, and I think it's important that people understand what the priorities are. I know lowering taxes is always a priority, but let's be realistic. Over the last 25 years in Bridgeport, when was the last time there was a significant tax decrease that made a real difference in someone's household budget? If you saw a flat tax or a slight increase, but you saw significant dollars getting poured into education, I would say most people would be okay with that.
And sir, the next question that I have here is, will Bridgeport BOE going to be hiring paraprofessionals to help the children?
Well, again, we're putting together a plan in terms of how to utilize dollars the most effective way, these federal dollars. So that is a discussion that's being had. But you know, right now it's still in the planning phases, so I don't want to say what we're hiring, what we're not hiring. But you know, we do need to make sure that we have proper support for our students, our most vulnerable students, in the classroom.
And then the next section of that is, will the paras be able to apply directly through the BOE or through staffing agencies?
Again, you know, that's something that you know, if it's a BOE open position, it will obviously be a BOE hire.
Okay, at this time I have no further questions, sir.
Okay, great.